Dean and Tyler Listel are registered investment advisor representatives. Investment advisory services offered through Brokers International Financial Services, LLC, member SIPC. Brokers International Financial Services, LLC, and Secure Retirement Solutions, LLC are not affiliated companies.
It's time for Secure Retirement Solutions with your hosts, Dean and Tyler Listel, fully licensed retirement specialists from Secure Retirement Solutions in Green Bay. Now, here are your hosts, Dean and Tyler.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us today. Tyler and I will discuss topics that affect your retirement, such as investments, income planning, Social Security, and much more. Good morning, Tyler. How are you?
Good morning, Dean. I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Good, thank you. Today we're going to be talking about the new CARES Act, C-A-R-E-S. Due to the coronavirus, there was a new act put in place this year, signed into law. It's basically $2.2 trillion of money that is put into the economy to be used as stimulus and or compensation for those people who have lost their job due to non-essential shutdown of their businesses or their job. However, within this act, there are a lot of things that affect people both individually as well as small businesses. So we're going to go through that and try to unravel this a little bit and put it in layman terms so it's easy to understand. However, anything that we talk about, if there are additional questions, feel free to give us a call, email us. Also, you can go to sba.gov, the Small Business Administration. Most of the CARES Act is going through the Small Business Administration. But that's sort of a broad look, $2.2 trillion. A lot of that is allocated for individuals. As an example, there are going to be things such as stimulus checks that are going to go either directly into people's checking accounts, or if you don't have direct deposit set up as a taxpayer, you'll receive a check. But there are certain restrictions to it, who qualifies and who doesn't. There are also retirement plan changes we're going to talk about. And then for those businesses of 500 people or less, there is a provision called a Paycheck Protection Program that is becoming very active. You might have heard about it in the news, where about half of the allocated amount has already been asked for through applications that are coming in. So to unwind this thing a little bit and look at it a little bit more closely, Tyler, let's talk about just broadly what is the new CARES Act.
Yeah, Dean. So first off, the new CARES Act, it was signed into law on March 27th, and it stands for Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security. That's CARES Act. Dean, like you mentioned, over $2 trillion. It's an over $2 trillion stimulus package. One of the largest one ever, designed to try and help mitigate the spread of the virus and ease the economic toll on American families, small businesses, and the healthcare system. And we're going to go and break down a lot of the different things within the bill in layman's terms, because it does apply to many people out there. And we've been getting a lot of questions lately, like who will receive these widely publicized stimulus checks? What help could be available for you if you lost your job or if you're furloughed or laid off? And then we also have a number of people too that run small businesses, and there's a big section within the CARES Act that does help small businesses too. So we're going to get into all that. Again, everything from the stimulus checks to unemployment, businesses, and then Dean, like you had mentioned as well, a lot of the retirement plan distributions, RMDs, plan loans, all those can be affected too. So we're going to dive into the details of pretty much everything. And we encourage you to go, and if you have any other questions or want information on this, the Small Business Administration, if you go on to their website, or the IRS, this is just irs.gov, they will have a lot more information as well, where they break down the whole law and stimulus package and give a lot of direction that way. With it being signed into law not too long ago, there still is quite a bit of information that is unclear, but we're going to try and break it down the best that we can, so that way hopefully we can give listeners a good idea of what to expect coming up here and how it can affect, the stimulus package can affect their own personal unique situation.
Okay, good points, Tyler. So we're going to talk about the stimulus checks right now. The way I understand it, some of them are already being mailed and or direct deposited into people's accounts directly. Really, out of the $2.2 trillion of the plan that was put into law, $300 billion is going to be stimulus checks sent directly to individuals, or again, put into your checking account if you have direct deposit. It really breaks down to $1,200 per person or $2,400 per joint return, plus an additional $500 for a dependent child under the age of 17. But what qualifies that? There are certain financial limits here that we have to look at. Tyler, who's eligible for these stimulus checks of $1,200 or $2,400 for joint returns?
Yeah, Dean, so this is one of the main things, and this is one of the main questions that we get in terms of who is eligible. Now, first off, before I get into the numbers, another question, and this is the one that I got most commonly, is people want to know, because we have a lot of people that we talk to, we have a lot of clients that are retired, and they want to know, do I have to be working to receive this? And first off, the answer is no, you do not. You can be retired and still be eligible to receive these stimulus checks here. So that's the number one thing, where you don't have to be working. You can still get up to a $1,200 check or $2,400 if married filing jointly. Now, if you're single and your adjusted gross income in 2019, or if you haven't filed your tax return yet in 2019, then they will use the 2018 numbers. But if you're single and have less than $75,000, then you're eligible for the full $1,200 stimulus check. So again, if your adjusted gross income for 2019 or 2018 is under $75,000, then you can get you're eligible for the full check. Now, if you are married filing jointly, if you file a joint return, if you're married and your adjusted gross income is less than $150,000, then same thing, you're eligible for the whole $2,400 stimulus check. Now, that is that's reduced. So again, going back to, if you're single, you can make under $75,000, you can receive the full $1,200 check. However, if you make between $75,000 and $99,000 on your adjusted gross income, then it phases out, meaning that they run a formula, and instead of getting the full $1,200 check, you might get $1,000. And then as you get closer to $99,000, it might go down to $800, $500, $200, and so on. And if you make over $99,000, then it's completely phased out. So unfortunately, for those people who have adjusted gross income of more than $99,000 and file a single tax return, they will not be getting any stimulus check. So keep that in mind. If you're again $99,000 and you're single, you will not be receiving any stimulus check. And then if you are married filing jointly, in between the $150,000 threshold up to $198,000, it will go down. And then if you make more than $198,000 filing jointly, then you will not be receiving any stimulus checks. So stimulus checks, they are based on your income, your adjusted gross income. That's one thing to note, where if you do make too much, then you won't be getting it. Many people will, though, because those income numbers are somewhat lofty, especially in the Green Bay area here.
Okay, Taylor, good points. One thing I want to put out there, though, is there's one class of individuals who will not receive money regardless of income, even if they do qualify, and that is if you are delinquent in paying child support payments, you will not receive a payment. Do understand that. So if you have a delinquency in paying prior to this act being signed into law, you will not receive payments of any sort. So understand that. Now what we're going to do is we're going to talk about, for those people, let's say that you're still working, business might be slower, but it hasn't affected your income that much, so you don't have additional expenses to pay for because you haven't lost your job. What should you do with the money? We have people asking us, what should they do with the money? Now understand, when you're talking to Tyler and I, we're financial advisors. What would we like you to do? Invest some money. However, there are certain situations where we would like you to take care of things prior to investing any money. Tyler, what are some of those things about, like expenses and so on?
Yeah, Dean. So with that, now if you're eligible to get a stimulus check, the next question is, okay, well, what should I do with that? And Dean, as you said, for many people, investing it would be a good option. However, you need to take an inventory where your current situation is and analyze and say, okay, if I am, because again, many people are furloughed, they're laid off, they lost their job. If you fall under one of those categories, then you definitely don't want to, or you might not want to invest it. But if you fall under one of those categories where you're not working right now and you don't have sufficient savings to last until we get through this whole thing and get everyone back to work again, then we recommend taking that and piling that cash into savings and making sure that you've built up and added to your emergency fund. So number one, if you don't have enough savings and if you're in a situation where you're laid off or you might be laid off, keep that in cash. Otherwise, if you are in that situation where you're laid off or might be laid off and you feel that you have enough cash, then you can do one of two things. Or if you're not in that situation, you're still working, you're still in a stable or steady job, then it comes down to, we recommend either investing it or paying down debt. That's the other thing too, where use this as a good opportunity to knock out. There's so many people I see that have, $1,000, $2,000, $5,000 in credit card loans or student loans. Use this to knock that out and just get rid of it at that time. So that way you don't have to worry about it. You don't have it lingering over your head during a time period like this. So again, if you don't have, or if you have sufficient savings, or if you're not worried about losing your job right now, pay down some debt. And then after that, take this as a good opportunity to invest, just because the market, it bottomed out of a couple weeks back, but still the market is down 15 to 20% from the beginning of the year. So you can still use this as a good opportunity to go and invest that money. You're still buying in relatively low compared to where we were a month to a month and a half ago. So again, with that money, the top three things is either keep that cash depending on your situation, pay down debt, or invest it. No need to go out and spend it on things that you don't need. I know some people are tempted to do that just because you're quarantined, you might be off work, you're going stir crazy, you want to go and spend it on something, a toy or whatever it might be. I would advise against that during this time period until you make sure all your finances are taken care of first and you're stable financially before you go out and do that. The one other thing, there's some people that they feel that they have the obligation to go and spend it to stimulate the economy. No, you don't want to do that either. You get this, you want to go and try and prop up your own personal situation, whether that's adding to savings, paying down debt, or investing the money.
Okay, good points. What about for those people who lost their job? There's additional unemployment benefits that are available. Roughly $260 billion of the $2.2 trillion was set up for additional unemployment benefits. And that is for people who also are self-employed. Okay, so if you're self-employed, whether it's a sole proprietorship, LLC, a partnership, you do qualify for unemployment benefits just because of the unique situation. Also, if you're an independent contractor, a gig worker is what they refer to, another category, and those with limited work histories, you do qualify. You need to go through the process through the unemployment office and or online to apply for benefits. Those benefits are available. Though understand, if you were on paid sick leave or other paid leave prior to this law being put into place, you do not qualify for additional unemployment benefits. You would continue on that paid leave, but you would not qualify for both paid leave and unemployment benefits.
Yeah, Dean, good points there. One thing before I add to the unemployment benefits, just one more thing that I wanted to mention with the stimulus checks that I forgot that I think is important is many people, they want to know, well, what's the timeline? You hear all about it, but when am I going to receive this? And it was said that right around April 10th is when the first batch is going to be mailed out. Now, I don't know how long that's going to take. They didn't specify, but just so people know, they wanted to shoot for right around April 10th in terms of trying to get those out and get those going. And then you could get them sometime, I would anticipate, over the next month, but obviously it's not clear. So they should be in the works here in the near future. In regards to the unemployment insurance benefits, obviously in the stimulus package, there are a number of unemployment benefits, and for those people who are unemployed due to the virus pandemic, you can receive up to $600 per week in unemployment benefits. So again, if you do fall into a case like this where you're unemployed and you need the income, go and check and see if you can possibly file for that unemployment. But at the same time, that shouldn't stop you from going and trying to find work in the meantime where you could potentially make more than what you would be making on unemployment. There are a number of companies that are actually out there hiring during this time period to try and fill demand for certain types of consumer discretionary and consumer staples type products. I mean, I just saw that the other day. There's companies like Tractor Supply, Walmart, Amazon. There's so many different companies that are out there hiring. And if you right now are stuck in a lot of debt, you probably would be better off going and trying to get a job than receive unemployment, just because you could make more depending on how much you work. And if you're in a situation where you're in debt and you need the income, then you might want to try and consider working instead of collecting unemployment. But for those people, again, that are unemployed due to the virus, you can receive up to $600 per week in unemployment benefits. So that's something that you definitely might want to check out if this virus is impacting your work.
Okay, before we continue, we're going to take a quick break.
You're listening to Dean and Tyler Listle, investment advisors with Secure Retirement Solutions, located on Packerland Drive in Green Bay. For a complimentary review of your current investments, or if you have questions, please call them at 920-347-9888 or go to their website at srsplans.com.
Okay, before we go on, we're going to talk a little bit more about the unemployment benefits. For those people who are on Social Security and were working and lost their job, again, you still qualify for unemployment benefits. Understand that unemployment insurance or benefits are taxable income, so it does show up as income. However, it is not earned income, and it does not go against your Social Security. So let's say you get an increase in your unemployment compensation. Tyler said, for instance, $600, but you're only used to making $200 or $300. The additional money will not penalize your Social Security benefit. So understand that. Okay, a couple other things. There's also some changes as it relates to retirement plans. So if you were working and had a 401k or other retirement plans, there are some options that you can tap into those in order to give yourself some relief in order to pay bills and so on. We usually think of that as a last resort, and most of the time, if you borrow against or tap into a 401k due to what is considered emergencies, those things typically take care of themselves, and unfortunately, you will probably never replenish that money again in a retirement plan. So there's always a balance here. Even though it's available to you, let's exhaust other options first. But the first one is the 10% penalty that you're hit with by taking money out prior to 59 and a half years old from your corporate sponsored plan like a 401k. That is no longer in place. So for instance, if you have, you can show a hardship due to the coronavirus, you were laid off, you had additional expenses, you had to help other family members, you can tap into your 401k prior to 59 and a half years old without that 10% penalty. So that's very important. That is, there's a certain time limit to it. And it's also up to $100,000 that you can tap into. So that is one thing. But again, we always tell people let's use caution here and look at other options if they're available first.
Yeah, Dean. No, this is a huge one. And like you said before I get into the details here again, if other options are available first, you want to utilize those. Just because you possibly can take money out of a 401k or an IRA early doesn't mean that you should. And part of the reason why, especially right now, is just because the market is so incredibly volatile and it's still beaten up quite a bit. The last thing that you want to do is sell shares at a low that you're never going to recapture, never going to get back, especially if you're younger. So this is a last resort type option. But again, in in the stimulus package, it says the 10% early withdrawal penalty. So again, if you're under 59 and a half, you traditionally can't take money out without a 10% penalty. However, that 10% penalty won't apply to any coronavirus-related disruption on retirement plans and IRAs up to a combined $100,000 per year in 2020. And then taxes on that can be spread out over 3 years, and you can recontribute to any eligible retirement plan within 3 years after that too. So really the Treasury and IRS is being very lenient here. However, again, we don't recommend doing this unless you absolutely have to. But the other thing is, keep in mind that you can't just go and do this no matter what if you're sitting at home and fine and retire, and you're sitting at home and you're fine and you're under 59 and a half. You can only waive the 10% penalty if you have what they consider a coronavirus-related distribution. So a coronavirus-related distribution, as they defined it in the Act, is someone who is diagnosed with the virus by a CDC-approved test, who they have a spouse who's diagnosed with it, or if they experience adverse consequences as a result of being quarantined, furloughed, laid off, or anything like that. And again, we advise against it as well, because this is something where further guidance is needed to determine how a taxpayer will self-certify that they've experienced what the IRS considers adverse consequences. So what you consider that, the IRS might not consider that, and they might come back in hindsight and hit you with a 10% penalty. So again, it's important to note that if you are faced with different types of coronavirus-related disruption, then you can take this distribution. The 10% early withdrawal penalty is waived, but we advise against it.
Okay. Another one that people are talking about and can really help those retirees is if you are 72 years old, you have to take what's called a required minimum distribution. It used to be 70 and a half years old up until this last year, and then it moved to 72 years old. And what happens is there is a formula. You have to take a certain percentage of your qualified money in the form of a distribution, and it's determined based on the value of the account that the withdrawal would come from on December 31st of the previous year. Well, if we look at December 31st of the previous year in 2019, the market was screaming high. And that means in the year 2020, you'd be required to take a distribution when the market is at a significant low, which means you would be bringing down your portfolio more than you normally would in a good market. So what has happened through the CARES Act is they are temporarily waiving the required minimum distributions in 2020 if you would like that. It doesn't mean that it's mandatory. For some people, they still need to get that money coming in. For others who don't really rely on that money, you can bypass it this year, keep it in your portfolio, and that's going to help you get a more robust recovery rather than taking that withdrawal when the market is down.
Yeah, Dean, really good point there. This is something that we talk about all the time with our clients' RMDs, but just again, important to note that if you are eligible to take an RMD, you do not have to for the calendar year 2020. You still can if you want, but RMDs, you do not have to take the money if you don't need the money. Okay,
now we're going to jump to some of the business-related provisions. In part of the CARES Act and the program, the $2.2 trillion, there's a significant amount that is put aside for small businesses. And a lot of people this applies to because they have their own small business of 500 people or less. Some only have one employee. It applies to all of those people from one employee right up to 500. But really it comes down to, in general terms, if you can keep people on payroll for the next couple of months through the end of June, you can qualify for a small business administration loan that would give you money upwards of $14,000 to keep those people on payroll. And if you do keep them on payroll and can show the Small Business Administration after the June 30th deadline that you've used that money to take care of payroll, it converts from a loan to a grant. Now, a loan has to be repaid. A grant is something that doesn't have to be repaid, but make sure you understand it has to be utilized to take care of payroll if you decide to lay people off between now and the deadline into June, you don't qualify to have it convert to a grant. It stays a loan then, and you have to repay it. So do understand there's certain requirements here, though it is extremely popular for businesses right now. As a matter of fact, here into the second week of April, half of the money allocated has already been spoken for those people sending in applications. If you would like to proceed with this, go to sba.gov. Also, talk to your banker. This is something that has to be done through your local bank. Now, don't go to a bank that you're not currently doing business with. Go to the bank that you are doing business with, either your checking or savings, corporate checking or savings, or business checking or savings. Go to them and get the information. It really doesn't take that long to complete.
Yeah, Dean, really good point there. Again, with the last portion of the show here, this is a big one. But if you are a small business owner, if you have less than 500 employees, and we do work with and have a number of small business owners, this is something that you really want to take a look at, where there's a number of programs out there that can help give you some relief in the form of a grant that's basically free money. In this case here, one of them, the Paycheck Protection Program, basically you're eligible for what is a grant, or it's technically a loan that can be forgiven if you use it for your payroll costs. So it could be used for payroll, mortgage, rent, utilities, different things like that. And if you can prove that you used it for that, then it can be forgiven. Provided, Dean, as you had said, this is a big one, provided you keep your employees on through June 30th of 2020. So you have to prove that you're not cutting hours, or that you're not cutting your employees, because that's the whole reason why they provide it and why they could potentially forgive it. It's to entice employers to keep employees on, because I know President Trump recently said this, and I couldn't agree more, just that small business is the backbone of America, and that's why the payment protection program through the stimulus bill is there to try and prop up small businesses and force and give relief to these small businesses, so that way they can keep people employed through this time period. So again, if you are a small business owner, you really want to look into a number of these different programs within the stimulus bill that can help provide relief for your business.
Okay, that's all the time we have this week. See you later, and hope you'll join us again next week.
We'll see you next week.
You've been listening to Secure Retirement Solutions with your hosts, Dean and Tyler Listle, fully licensed retirement specialists from Secure Retirement Solutions in Green Bay. To get more information from Dean and Tyler, contact them on Packerland Drive in Green Bay. Call 920-347-9888 or visit them at srsplans.com. Securities and investment advisory services offered through Brokers International Financial Services, LLC. Member SIPC. Brokers International Financial Services is not an affiliated company.